Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. I'm not in studio today because we have our guest out in LA, somebody I'm really excited to speak to. He plays Johnny the Zip on Tulsa King. I'm a huge Tulsa King fan. His name is Guy Nardulli. Great actor. He's a friend. Guy Nardulli, welcome to the New Theory podcast. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you, man. This is it's a cool experience.
All right, so I need to be fully transparent. When Tulsa King first came out first season, I had some trepidations. I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Is it a comedy? Is it a mob thing? Is it both? And it turns out to be one of my favorite shows. So for those who are not so inclined, what is the Tulsa King and what is it about?
Well, Tulsa King follows Dwight Manfredi, who is played by the great Sylvester Stallone. He gets out of prison after serving 25 years, returns back to his hometown in New York, goes back to the family, and they have a family meeting. There's a new regime running the family, and they send him to Tulsa. Basically saying, go plant the flag out there, go do what you want to do, but really to exile him in a sense. And Dwight, the general, as he's known on the show, plants his flag, creates a family out there, starts earning money. And let's just say the New York family wasn't happy that he was succeeding. So the rivalry there just starts building in season one. He finds himself in trouble with a couple of the local gang members that were running the weed circuit in Tulsa. That's basically what it was about. It's about cannabis, and he got into the cannabis world in Tulsa, started selling that. And the gang members that were there didn't like that either. So there was a crossfight between New York family wanting their cut and the Tulsa gang members wanting their cut.
Love it. And a little bit of was it a DEA or whatever she was, the little bit of law enforcement involvement. All right, we're not gonna give too much away.
He falls for one of the DEA agents, unbeknownst to him, and the season one ends with a cliffhanger in that sense. I don't want to overly ruin it for those that haven't seen it. Season one it's on CBS now on Sundays. You can watch it. It's catered to the CBS network, so the F-bombs are dropped out of the show. But if they want to catch the full show, they can still watch it streaming on Paramount Plus.
And Paramount Plus as well, correct. All right. So the cool thing, though, is you are in a part in the first season. The reason why I'm having Guy on, because he's in a much expanded role in the second season. I don't even know what that extent is. I don't know how much you can speak to that. We'll get to that in a second. But in the first season, he's in a critical role at the funeral for Dom Lombardozzi's character. Shout out to Dom. And, they're thinking of maybe disposing of the general. And then you jump in and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Isn't he a made guy? I'd like to hear, as an actor, that role and that part. Then you kind of being as Italian American from Chicago, maybe knowing a little bit enough about that world, at least what you saw in the movies. I want to hear how you kind of unpack that part.
Well, I mean, since coming out to Los Angeles 21 years ago, I've either been a cop, I've been a fireman, or I played a mobster. Yeah. That's my wheelhouse. And growing up in Chicago, growing up as an Italian American in Chicago, I was very familiar with this world.
Yeah.
So when I got the audition for it was Johnny Avalon initially, the name of the character. They changed it to Johnny the Zip when I showed up on set.
Interesting.
So when I auditioned for it, I was excited because 21 years ago, Sopranos was huge, and I was dying to get on Sopranos. I was a new actor. Resume was not built up strong enough yet, and I got small auditions for it. I just never booked Sopranos. So when it ended, when the series ended, I was disappointed. I'm like, man, there's no other great mob shows that I could be a part of.
Yeah.
Tulsa King came up in the circle, and I got excited for one, Sylvester Stallone. I've been a fan of his since a child, as far as I can remember. I remember him in Lords of Flatbush playing Stanley. This is going beyond Rocky.
Yeah.
Obviously Rocky, Rambo, and then everything else that came up in the 80s. He was like the action star that every Italian American kid just wanted to be.
Yep.
So to have an opportunity to audition for that, knowing that I have a shot to be on that show, I put all the work I could put into it. Playing a mobster, again, pretty simple. I throw on the New York accent a little bit. I get, a little feel, put on the suit, and I was ready to go with it. Showed up on set when we were working on that to develop the character a little bit. Because I didn't know how long that character was going to last. I didn't know if I was going to go, because I show up in episode 8 in season 1. So, and there was only 9 episodes in the season. So I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. So as I got the script and I was reading it, I really kind of went along the lines of being a traditionalist in the mob family. Like you got to do things right. You can't just take out a made guy.
Yeah.
You got to go through the channels. You got to go to the higher ups. And here we are having a meeting at a funeral from the boss, who just passed, and now his son is taking over, and we're talking about taking out the general. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea, guys. Like, it's just not the way we do it. You just can't take out a made guy.
Yeah.
It's not like some guy on the street corner that you could take out because he didn't pay his vig. This is, and he's a legend, and he's a legend on top of it, right? So I make the argument, and Chicky, played by Dom, who's amazing, by the way. I love working with Dom, took offense to it heavily and decided to drive me into the wall and make a threat that he was going to take me out. So when the episode ended, it was ambiguous if I was going to die or not. So I didn't know what was going to happen. So I was excited that I didn't die in that episode. So I'm like, I got to come back for at least one more. Yeah. Because if he's going to kill me, they got to show him killing me.
Now, is it known, and don't give this away if it's not, it's assumed because you're saying that you are a made guy and in the presence of other made guys. That's the assumption about Johnny the Zip, correct?
Correct. Johnny the Zip is one of the capos of the family.
So then if you follow mob parlance, and you probably, Dominic's character shouldn't even touch you even the way that he did. So you kind of see that that hypocritical, and that's what the writers probably wanted to show is
the cracking of the wall is happening. Yeah, and without getting into too much detail with season 2, a lot of that is happening. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stress fractures happening within the family. Obviously with Dwight, within our family, because right there's the inner struggle just between the family. I'm already showing it, by going against what the current boss is asking for.
Now, you are an accomplished actor. You've done a whole bunch of stuff. We'll put a link below to your IMDb. You're a working actor. This is what you do professionally. It's not a part-time thing. It's not a passion, labor, love. This is what you do. Right. This is your vocation, and it's not easy to do. Kevin's a mutual friend, Kevin Donato. He's another guy who works as an actor for a living, which is very difficult to do, right? But when you saw Sly on set for the first time, you saw Sylvester Stallone, I know you're a real actor. You had to get geeked out a little bit on that.
So Chris Coldovino, who plays Goody, on the show, I was talking. We were having dinner. So when I got back, when I got cast in season 2, when I knew I was coming back, and we shot season 2 in Atlanta. Season 1 we shot in Oklahoma. Okay. So when I flew into Atlanta the first time, I was having dinner with Chris. And we were talking, and I was excited to be part of the show. Like I knew I was going to be in for multiple episodes. Yeah. When they booked me for season 2, they told me how many I was going to have initially, and then it grew throughout the season. Awesome. But back to the point. So I'm sitting down having dinner with Chris. I'm like, hey man, I'm like I didn't get to meet Sly in season 1. I'm I'm gonna geek out. Like I'm gonna fanboy out, and I've worked with Dwayne Johnson. I've worked with Ryan Reynolds, right? I've worked with major celebrities, big time stars, and I haven't geeked out with anyone.
Yeah.
Stallone, I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to geek out. Like I'm afraid I'm going to turn into a fanboy. And he gave me a little piece of advice. He's like, hey man, I'll tell you this right now. He's like, you could do that, and he'll totally appreciate it. He goes, but then you won't be looked at a worker, as a peer, you'll be a fan. He's like,
Yeah.
try to kick that back. Like, don't really push that out. So I was like, okay, great. I already knew that going in. So the day that I saw him on set, I couldn't help myself. It felt like a 3-year-old looking at Santa Claus for the first time. And his presence, his demeanor, his voice, there was nothing about him that was different than what he was when he played Stanley in Lords of Flatbush. I'm like, that's my idol. I was just looking at him. I'm like, okay, calm down, relax.
That's
He's
awesome.
just a man. And here, funny thing, I'm actually wearing him on my shirt right now. If you see it, him is John Rambo. Like, and a friend of mine is partnered with him on this company. It's called this Sly Stallone shop.
Nikki, right?
Yeah, Nikki.
Yeah.
So
he came to my. I think I told you he came to my book party back in 2013, and Mickey Ward was there because I think he knew Mickey and he came.
Yeah, that's right. You told me about that. You told me about that. But yeah, he gave me a bunch of his T-shirts.
Awesome.
So when I saw him, inside of me geeked out, but the professional in me kind of was like, no, we got to keep this calm, keep this cool. Hi, how are you? Thank you very much for having me on your show. I did on my last day. I did gift him because another friend of mine owns a company called the Inner Circle. So he has like T-shirts, and Sly's a big cigar smoker. Yeah. So I gifted him a cigar lighter and a cigar cutter from the Inner Circle, which it's basically mob related. The kid that owns it is called Dominic Capone, whose great uncle was the infamous Al Capone.
Oh, that'd be fun to. Let's get him on the show.
So he's great. He's great, man. We've done a movie together.
You know him back in the day in Chicago, or you know him as an LA guy?
I knew him back in the day in Chicago, when we used to go out to like the living room. It was a club in Chicago. What was his drink? I think his drink was gin and tonic, because mine was Campari and soda back in the day. Yeah. So like that's how far back we go. But I got these gifts. I gifted the rest of the mob family, a couple T-shirts and all that stuff, and then I gifted him the hoodie and a cigar lighter. So
yeah, because he was a member at Macanudo Club back in the day. So I believe Macanudo Club. So when you go there, I think Sly had a box, Schwarzenegger had a box. I never saw them there, but I was a member too. And I was always like wanted to have a cigar with him. Like that's like my dream. All right. So you land the bigger role. You can't talk about it much. It's going to be released on September 15th, Tulsa King season 2. And give us a little bit about how, although you theoretically might have bigger roles, how did this later role kind of help you develop as an actor?
How did this role?
Yeah, like obviously a strong career, did a lot of great things. Now, recurring role. How did this go on in your development as an actor?
So going back, like I was fortunate, like you said, 21 years. I'm a working actor. I've been, knock on wood. It's made my career. It's made my living. Am I in the top 1%? No, but I earn a living as an actor. And I was lucky that I was on soap operas, between General Hospital and The Bold and the Beautiful. I worked on, multiple episodes there. I've worked on, Criminal Minds. But all of those, General Hospital and Bold and the Beautiful, I had to develop a little bit more of a character. Like I had to work, the depths of the character. The other ones I was on guest star roles, one day here, one day there, one day there. This one, when I got it, I had to start developing some nuances with myself, some mannerisms that only Johnny the Zip would have, and whys. And I came up with a bunch of whys. And then working with Vince Piazza, who plays Vince on the show.
Yes.
You see our interaction in episode 8 of season 1. Like you see the interaction that we're having back and forth in that brief moment. I took that interaction and I spoke to him. I'm like, hey man, can we develop our friendship? Right. So throughout the season now, you see that developing. I could say that. Yeah, I could say that. You can see that developing. You could see that, we're getting closer in our ideas and concepts of what we want done.
All right. So
Did that
you're
answer your question? I think I
yeah,
answered it.
that did because I was always wondering you being kind of an accomplished actor and then getting a big role in a hot series with some pretty big players. Is it kind of like regular day at the office, or did it help you like kind of develop? And it appears that it did. So you're a Chicago guy. Give us where you were born. Yeah, I know you played some ball. Give us a little bit
Yeah.
about learn a little bit about you.
Born and raised in it's a village called Howard Heights, and it's surrounded. It's an island essentially surrounded by the city of Chicago. You cross the street, you're in Chicago. You come back, you're in Howard Heights. And Italian neighborhood, Little Italy. I grew up speaking Italian. That was like my first language. My grandmother, who passed a couple of years ago, was 99 years old. Moved out here in 1963. Didn't speak a lick of English.
Wow.
And so I spoke Italian to her growing up in my entire life. I played football in high school, got a scholarship to play college football.
Your parents were born there or born here?
Yes, my parents were off the boat, as we would say.
So let me ask you though. So I my family's from the other side too, and I remember like playing football, like freshman football. Like I would like there was a break between you go home and then go practice, and like my mother didn't understand. Like she would make like chicken cutlets to like make you eat before practice. So like when I'm jogging, the guy behind me is getting the worst of it. When I'm farting the whole did the whole mile with the gear on. Like, how were your parents with like Americanized sports? Did they understand? Were they supportive? Like, I want to kind of understand that a little bit.
So my father is a Marine. He's not was a Marine, is a Marine. They're Marines for life, as my dad would say. Then he became a police officer, so he got Americanized fairly quickly.
Oh, awesome!
But joining the military and such. My mom was a hairdresser and worked within the neighborhood. So she lived in the Italian culture.
Yeah,
still has an accent. My father knew of sports. Put me in. I was playing soccer as a kid. I was playing baseball. All the sports. So my dad really got into it with me.
That's awesome.
I'll get into that in a bit. My mom, on the other hand, she didn't understand the game. Yeah. So when she would watch, she knew my number, right? So I wore number 24. So she knew my number, and if she couldn't see my number, she recognized me by my backside, by my ass. She's like, I could tell that's the bubble. That's the Nardulli bubble. I know that's him. And I'm like, Mom, you can't tell that story like that. That sounds a little like weird. And she's like, well, you're my son. I've known that butt since you were a baby. So
that's fun. Yeah.
So it took a while for her to understand the game. Like in high school, it was just running around, smacking into people. College, she started to understand a little bit more. When I got up into the pro ranks, she really understood the game.
Yeah, because I remember I used to watch baseball as a kid with my mom, and you know how like it fouls off and it goes back or to the side out of play. I'd explain to my mom each time where the ball went and like why isn't he running and all that kind of stuff. So I just wonder if you had a kind of similar experience. All right,
yeah.
So you were really good in high school. You played D1 or what did you play in college?
I went to Penn State, then I graduated and finished off at Elmhurst, and I was an All-American over at Elmhurst.
Did you get any PT at Penn State or no?
Yeah.
And then Elmhurst, you crushed it, obviously.
I crushed it over at Elmhurst. Crushed it.
Nice. And then you went pro. Tell us about that.
I signed with the Bolzano Giants, which is an affiliate of the Giants, and I played in Italy. So it was awesome. I played in the European League. Then I came back and I bounced around. Arizona. I was in Iowa. I was in Ohio, and I ended up playing with the affiliate in Chicago called the Chicago Thunder.
Oh wow! So apropos that you ended up at home. How long did you play in Italy for?
About a year and a half. It was like a season and a half.
And Bolzano is a city, or I didn't know.
Bolzano is a suburb of Milan. And
so you know in Italy. That's nice.
I lived there for a bit, and it was stunning, gorgeous. Me speaking fluent Italian, but being in northern Italy, I'm Southern Italian.
Yeah, Northern Italian. They'll actually pick up on your accent.
Ooh, they picked up on that, and they straight up told me you're better off speaking English than you are speaking Italian because they still don't like each other.
So that I was in like Germany, and I saw you know this. You hear somebody speaking Italian, you're like your antennas go up wherever you are at this point, especially nowadays because it's less common. So I was in Germany. I was like, oh, St. Italiani, we're talking, and they're like, like I at that time I probably spoke even a little better proper Italian, if you will. And I was speaking to them, and they're like, "Oh, where you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, Campania." And then just they're like just like the gloss came over.
Yeah.
And I was with another Italian American, and not to knock anybody, but he gave the analogy of imagine like you and me are in, Milan, and we run into like some Americans, and not I wouldn't care, but in general, like, oh, they're from like Louisiana, deep South, like in the woods or sticks or backyard, whatever, and that's kind of the akin of you being from where you're from. So we're like, oh, my family's from Italy too. They're from here. They're like, eh. So they kind of like were very dismissive. I remember when I was in Milan for business, I would speak Italian, and I would just say terms. I said, how many sisters do you have? And they said like tre femmine, which is 3 women. But that's
Right.
like they pulled me aside. They're like, you just said 3 broads. You have to say tre donne. So so that dichotomy of are we American or are we Italian? So I do have an appreciation for that. What are some of the principles as an Italian American do you think you learn, whether from your parents or from the culture, that kind of still hold true for you today?
Loyalty, respect are two of the big ones that I carry with me. And I'm not saying that other cultures don't have it, but I think it's just stronger in the Italian community. Like you're loyal to your family and your friends. You value respect. Respect is earned. It's not really given. Like you have to, you got to respect one another, but it's earned. Like I'm just not going to give it to you. Like you have to give it back in that sense. And the family values that I grew up with in Italy, it's different. Like you don't have, and it's different now. It's different now because the culture's changed, but there's not really like a huge divorce rate, in Italy. It's like the families stick together, good and bad, and I've watched, like my mom and dad have been married now. It'll be 51 years, August 25th. And I've watched them argue. Right. I've watched them argue. I'm the oldest boy in the house. I'm the oldest kid in the house. So I've watched everything happen, but I've watched them love, and I've watched them go through hard times, and I've seen the great times, and they've always stuck together. And we've always sat down. We always had dinner together. It was family. Everything was family.
Nice.
Growing up, my grandparents were always in the house. So cousins, nephews, nieces, like we're always surrounded. And because of that, it made my work ethic what it is today too. Because I have something to work towards. It's like I have to do things in order to keep my family together.
Yeah.
And it's not about money. It really isn't. Like I was talking about this with a friend of mine the other day. I never grew up needing anything. I may have wanted a lot of things, but I didn't grow up needing. If I wanted a bike and I wanted the Mongoose or the Haro, like the really expensive bicycle, my dad turned around and got me a Huffy.
Yeah.
It's not that it was any worse off, but I got a bike.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that I didn't get it. I got it. We had food on the table. We were never like eating, just broth. Like my mom would cook. And a lot of times there was a lot of stuff that was out of the yard. Like, so I learned how to do a lot of that stuff. As a matter of fact, just before I got on with you today, I made some focaccia bread, and it was in the oven, and I pulled it out. It's cooling down now. So I can't wait to go take a bite of it.
That's awesome. So being out in LA, I do have a question for you. Being out in LA, you have a mixed bag of, there are not a ton of Italians, but there's enough, right? And I know a lot of you guys kind of hang out together because you're from similar backgrounds and stuff. What's the difference being a Chicago Italian from when you went to the West Coast? There's a lot of New York Italians. Give us the differences and similarities you found between you guys in Chicago and the New York Italians, even Jersey Italians, if you will.
You're gonna get me in trouble. They're gonna get me in trouble. New York Italians they take it seriously, man. They take being a New York Italian very serious. Like that's between the pizza and who they are and the bravado that they carry. And it's the same as Chicago. It's the same as Chicago. But the funny thing is Chicago and New York have that battle, right? Who's this? Who's that? Second city, big city, da 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 da. Show up in LA, and it became the community.
Oh, nice.
It wasn't. It started off that way, right? It started off with the ball busting between one another, but essentially it became, we're together in this, and you started gravitating around that and building that community that way. We still argue about pizza out here. We've got the better pizza, Chicago, New York. That's never going to stop.
Are you a deep dish guy?
The funny thing is, the deep dish pizza is a tourist pizza.
Oh,
it's not like the true Chicagoan does not eat that casserole. They'll have
it's like, isn't it like cut up smaller and
it's cut up in squares? It's style, and it's cracker crispy thin. Yeah. That's a true Chicago pizza, not the deep dish.
So
beef sandwiches are a whole different story. Like the beef sandwich is a whole different story.
Yeah. Did you see the Bear?
I did. I love the Bear. The Bear. I owned a pizzeria with my cousins before moving out to Los Angeles, and that whole dynamic that's happening in that kitchen, totally happens. Totally happens. I'm yelling at my cousin all the time. He's yelling at me. We're throwing things at each other. Behind. All that is.
So we're gonna get into you going back to Chicago and your newest project, Dirty Hands, coming up in a second. So when you go back to Chicago, give us like the top 1, 2, or even 3 pizza spots that people need to know about in Chicago.
Villanopoli, Vince's, Nancy's, which is now Super Rosa.
Beautiful. All right. So I don't know if
hands down. And then the best beef, I got to give you beef if you're going there, is Jay's Beef. Hands down. Not going to get a better beef sandwich. Sweet and hot peppers, Jay's Beef. I will plug them for free.
I love it. So, okay. So I guess speak to what you can, because we didn't talk about this before, but you're going back to Chicago. You're getting involved in, not just a role, but in a production, independent movie with Kevin and Donato, friend of the show, personal friend of both of ours. Can you speak to that a little bit? And if so, what do you?
Oh, yeah, I can 100% share what's going on there. I can actually tell you what we have, who we have cast and everything.
Oh, beautiful.
So Kevin and I met on a television show. Let me just give you that little brief on that. So Kevin and I met on a television show called Rush Hour.
Yeah.
It was who's the star in the show? I can't remember stars. Oh God, that's so bad. I'm terrible. I am sorry. I can't remember the two leads.
Google it while we're here.
But we met on that show and we hit it off. Again, 2 Italian guys sitting around for hours.
Yeah, we started like the movie TV version, right?
Yeah, the TV version. Yeah.
Justin Hines.
I'm sorry. Justin, I'm sorry. He shot me. He killed me on the show. I deserve not to remember your name there, Justin. You shot me and you killed me.
There you go.
So Kevin and I, we meet on that show, and then our Italian background, our athletic background. He was a vet. We talked about my father, being a vet, family values, and we just grew our friendship. So 2 years ago, he approaches me about Dirty Hands, because we've always talked about trying to work together again in some fashion. So 2 years ago, he comes up and approaches me with Dirty Hands, and we tried putting it together. We had funding that was kind of set and it fell through, didn't happen, and we put it on pause. Within the last year, Kev hits me back up. We changed things up because he and I were both going to play the leads.
Yeah.
And in this business, it is a money business, so you have to understand how to sell a movie on top of it.
He explained it to me. It's a lot different. It's like how I expected, but it's a lot different than I thought. And even you and I talked about that a little bit too. It's not like about relationships per se. Like in a grander scheme, it's about what bankable actors and
what's bankable and what's not. I have a big television background.
Yeah.
Like I've been working on television. I don't have a huge film background where I was a lead in movies.
Yeah.
So for he and I to take the lead in the movie, it would have been hard to sell it on the foreign market. So we went out, we approached a couple actors. We have Patrick Muldoon
Nice.
attached. Starship Troopers, Days of Our Lives. He's been around a long, long time. Amazing, terrific actor. Because of him, we have Denise Richards now attached
Oh, that's
to the
official?
movie. It's official.
Because
We
I
have
was talking
Denise.
to Kevin, and it was I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think he was in development. I don't know, it was official. That's awesome.
Yep. I just signed off sent off her contract. So we have Denise Richards attached. The movie's about two brothers who foul up a job, and it all takes place within one night. The boss, I'm one of the bosses, is chasing them throughout the town, and we get into this big scuffle. I don't want to get too in detail of what happens. It is an action movie. It is an action movie that has some levity to it and has some drama to it. But it is an action movie set in Chicago. I get to go home, film another movie. It's my second movie that I'll be filming in Chicago. Use my neighborhood for the first time.
That's dope. That's dope.
And it's like the prodigal son is returning kind of thing. Like the mayor opened up the gates for us. So we're excited. We're excited about that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Guy, this is fun. We're going to have you back on. I just wanted to get you on because I wanted to kind of celebrate your role, your increased role with the Tulsa King. So I'll give you the final words. How can people find you?
So Instagram, safety24. If anyone's asking why, that's the position and number that I wore. Got me on Facebook. It's Guy M. Nardulli. You can find me on Facebook. Twitter, I don't really use as often anymore, but it's Guy24. There is a common theme here. 24 is my theme number, and it runs with me everywhere I go.
I love it. So I'm going to put a link below to his IMDb so you can kind of check out him and his career. And Guy, thank you for being on the New Theory podcast.